certification is good. How did we get to contracting with whomever came up here to do the training on Saturday without authorization from the board?
I was
How
there,
did that happen?
I was there and I had to go back about a date. How that happened was, the equipment had begun to be ordered by me for the class, because I was told twice by the office, by someone in the office,
By
Zeb,
whom?
who apparently,
By whom?
Zeb, who
Zeb.
apparently got it from Ray. By word of mouth, nothing was in writing. These conversations took place by word of mouth. So I went ahead and did what I was told I could do. I did not obligate the board. If anything, I obligated myself. At this point, I am still the only person obligated. I don't see it as a one-person or one-family obligation for these lifeguards to have the training they should have, nor did I set out to spend board money. So I totally understand if it's a problem for this board to reimburse the funds. Yes, I did end up spending money on one item that took the budget up over what had been projected, and I'm completely willing to eat that cost. In fact, I have paid for everything at this point in time. Nobody else has paid one single penny for any of this training. But I can live with myself because these kids are trained to guard this water. They're not going to be putting themselves in as great jeopardy as they would have been without this training. Furthermore, the community is much safer.
At this point, how much have you spent?
Well, at this point, an estimate would be around $1,500, although I have never given that number out because I was perfectly willing to go with the number that had been listed earlier, which was $1,200. I honestly didn't expect to get that because I was told that this amount that we had to propose had to go through a process, and the process is fine. I'm not objecting to the fact that things like this, expenses like this, should go through a process.
Let me ask you a different way. Do you have receipts for $1,500?
I have receipts for at least that much. I paid $400 on Saturday just for the training alone. So, and the equipment on top of that, yes, I have receipts for at least $1,200.
At least $1,200 or $1,500?
At least, actually, I probably have receipts for between $1,500 and $1,600. I have to get them all together. Like Judy said, this was Saturday. I wasn't home all day Sunday because in addition to the other things Emily does, she swims in McLean, Virginia, 4 miles to practice and at least 4 practices per week. So I was not home yesterday to get the numbers together. And having never been to a board meeting, I had no idea what was going to happen here.
Steve, wants to.
I commend the responsibility that's being shown. However, as a board member, if somebody comes to me and says, we want to spend $1,500 to make the lake more safe for our kids, I would have said, well, how many swim lessons can for little kids with $1,500 buy? I'm not going to argue with an expert from the Red Cross, but I can, on my tiptoes, almost breathe at the water in the dock. Okay, so it can't be more than 7 feet deep at the part of this dock. That's not to say somebody won't fall off a boat in 30 feet of water, but I'm not quite sure that's what we're hiring lifeguards for. I'd rather have them teaching swimming lessons to my 4-year-old nephew who's with me now. That's all I have to say.
Let's,
yeah, I just want to compliment Tony and Emily for getting these lifeguards. Apparently we have some really top lifeguards this year, and I think Emily did the recruiting. I want to thank you for that. And I came down and watched a little bit of the goings on Saturday, and it was being very well done. So, you know, we can point fingers and say who shot who, maybe this wasn't handled too well, but the bottom line is we're going to have terrific lifeguards, a much safer beach, and let's, you know, the general manager is entitled to make some expenditures without board approval, right? We have a document that delegates a certain amount. So let's not get all wrapped around the axle here. Well, all I want to say is I think this is a good thing and we ought to pay for it.
Yeah. Two comments. One, I think we've got some issues, personnel issues that we need to talk about in executive session, of how this information flowed, who said what, and what was meant by what was said, and the person listening to a staff member saying something, they have no reason not to believe what they're hearing. Secondly, money has been expended, we know it's been expended. I move that the board pay for this, whether or not it's in the budget, because it is for our benefit and our safety and the safety of our kids.
agreed that this community has benefited from excellent work.
Thank you.
My only question is this. What precedent does it set in the future for someone else who gets on the telephone
Absolutely.
and says, I just want to spend $2,000 or $5,000?
My neighbor has told me he thinks he'd like to put a cul-de-sac, a fountain in the cul-de-sac in front of my house because it would beautify Lake Oliver. I mean, this is a serious precedent.
This is
I'm sorry, I don't
also,
think it's not.
it's a precedent that's going to continue to cost the association in the years out because it is a service that you'll be providing. So it's a long-term commitment you're making
And
here.
how much is this long-term commitment per year rate?
It depends on how many lifeguards
We
this
have we have four lifeguards generally, it's $100 per
Well, you
lifeguard.
had 7 last year, so that's $700.
7 lifeguards?
Yes,
$700.
plus equipment.
Okay. So it's an ongoing commitment, but that
That's just, yeah.
puts some bounds on
We'll
it.
have to buy new
Joanne?
equipment every year.
I would pay, I think we definitely have some issues that we should discuss in executive session, but I believe that the community will benefit, and the bottom line is the money was spent, and there's no reason why that family should have to absorb it, so.
Ray, you mentioned that our insurer chimed in on this. Can you give me the timing on that?
I got that information end of last week.
At the end of last week?
Yes.
So that was,
And I also talked to Scott Weiner, with the same aquatic recreation center that Tony contracted with, and he confirmed the same. He's an experienced Red Cross and swimming instructor, and he felt the need. I also talked to a number of properties that are similar in size to this lake, the Rehab beaches, to get a feel for what they did on those properties. And I think that we are ahead of the game in that sense, because I think we are providing a service that is needed here by doing this. It's just that the process went really wrong.
Ray, you originally declined this. At some point you declined it.
I did my statement to Zeb on April 8th in an email, is I said to his project here, he first approached me with a $400 project and I went to 900 and so on. I said to him, good idea. I will include this project as a suggested 2009 budget item. And I had copied the board, I copied you at the very start, including the radar gun for the lake. These are outside, and I, as a general manager, I would make a practice of not committing any this association, to a long-term annual operating expense as this is going to be. I think it should involve the board, and it should be the board's action, not the general manager.
But you turned it down for this year.
Yeah.
You did so before you had this recommendation from our insurance company. Is that right?
That's correct.
If you had had the recommendation from the insurance company, which you currently have, at that time,
I would bring it to the board for your consideration.
then you would have pursued it in a positive fashion.
Yeah, I would have brought
So
it.
this made a big difference to you.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Oh, and by the way, the numbers we're talking about are within your discretionary over
Yes,
budget
Yes, sir.
limits, right?
Yes.
There's just one other thing I'd like to say, because this came up so quickly, it was difficult to get prior board approval for this, because the training had been set up for the 26th. And evidently Scott and Carolyn, the trainers, who I was very impressed with, because I did spend the proportion of Saturday. They rearranged their schedules. My question to you, Ray, is, it would seem to me that you should have been the one, I guess, to talk directly to Tony. It sounds like somehow Zeb got involved in this. I mean, and I assume that Zeb is the lifeguard supervisor?
That's right. And I think that if he had an idea as he did, I think I'm always willing to listen to ideas, but at the same time I provided him input. I didn't know that he was having the conversations with Tony until much later in the game.